Welcome to Pillow Talk. This is our second episode of this whole endeavor, and we actually decided that we are going to be doing this, as of now, weekly, and we're going to turn our regular podcast, Too Tired, into like an every other type of situation. We really enjoyed doing the first episode of Pillow Talk, and we got a lot of good interaction and feedback and things like that, and it just seemed like the audience really enjoyed that a little bit more. So we're going to give the people what they want.
And I think we had topics that we would much rather cover more than once a month, because we came up with a list of like 10 of them already that just seem more timely, and it's just easier for us to sit down and record a 20-minute video than it is to get a guest lined up and then record and then edit. The podcast isn't going anywhere. I really do love the podcast, and I feel like we're starting to gain a lot of traction with that, and we're getting more and more guests, and I'm getting really excited about it. But
yeah, Pillow Talk was just kind of on a whim, and we ended up loving it, so we're just going to roll with that.
And we both personally liked it as a way to kind of just sit down and do something together.
And it just kind of feels like less pressure and less job-ish.
There's no research behind the stuff before we do it, and there's no questions. It's just whatever we want to talk about. Our next episode will probably be Elliot's birth story, and then we're going to do an episode about me turning 30, and we have like 8 other episodes lined up after that. So
yeah,
topics, I mean. So today's episode is going to be all response questions to the first episode of Pillow Talk that came from YouTube, came from email, came from people commenting on stuff. So
if you listen to, then you know it was all about our love story.
That being said, with this video and any others, if you have feedback or you have questions that you want answered, please comment. Please leave a message on Instagram or something, or email us. And if you're not subscribed on YouTube, these are going to be posted as videos. Not that you have to watch them. They're still going to be posted as podcasts, even if they are only 15 to maybe 25 minutes long. But this will be
potentially longer. We always tell ourselves 15, 20 minutes, but honestly, we could talk forever. So
right. So the first question came from YouTube, and it was, what is the number one thing that made you attracted to each other at first? Can be physical or personality-wise.
I'm going to let you take this one first.
So I think obviously there was physical attraction, but I think it was more personality-based. Again, after friend zoning you 4 or 5 times, we built that base of friendship first, which I think is super important, and I think we kind of established the core of what would become our relationship before we even started dating. Once we started to get more serious about dating, I think we kind of revealed everything else. And that sounds like an innuendo, but it's not. And I think once we got more serious about dating, we leveled the playing field by being honest about things that I had never asked a girl before and things that she had never asked a guy before. And then we kind of leveled the playing field.
Yeah, we had some more intimate conversations, I would say.
Right. And it wasn't even necessarily sexual things, but it was just...
I mean, a lot of it was.
Some of it was. But again, at this point, that was the thing.
I mean, they were conversations that we had never had before. And I feel like that was like, if we were going to be in a relationship, that was the one thing that we hadn't talked about, haven't covered, didn't know much about each other in that regard yet. And so...
it definitely was the thing that opened my eyes to girls being the same as guys in a lot of ways.
Kind of.
And making it all seem easier. All of a sudden, there wasn't this weird pressure because it felt like there were no secrets. Everything was out in the open. Again, that sounds more innuendous than it was supposed to, but I think that was the big thing for me, was all of a sudden it went from kind of a fantasy type thing of girls are so mysterious to like, oh no, they're not. They're gross, just like everyone else. And
gross. Okay.
You know what I mean, though. And even that would be a great one for what's it like to live with a significant other. I mean, it just, everything seemed so much more normal, and that's the good word. It was normalized. So I wasn't afraid to be around you, or it just...
But then all of a sudden it made us more attracted to each other, which obviously if we're talking about those things is just going to happen automatically, I feel like.
I think it's just because the playing field was leveled out, and...
we were hitting all the bases.
I'm going to leave it on that because that was a pretty good pun.
Yeah, sometimes I'm funny.
What is your response?
I mean, obviously, I thought you were cute and attractive from the get-go. That's why I
Hell
stalked
yeah.
you when you worked at Target. Okay, not seriously stalked, but
Pretty much.
I remember like, because his mom and one of my mom's best friends were close and stuff. And I remember we'd like look him up on Facebook and look at pictures of him and be like, oh my God, she's so cute. Especially when like he had his senior pictures and stuff done.
God.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just weird about it. And I'd like show people and be like, he's so cute. So obviously there was that. But then like he already talked about, I definitely personality, and I think just the fact that he was somebody that I could trust and talk to about anything, and he wasn't judgmental, he wasn't making assumptions or anything like that. He was always just open to go to, made me feel really comfortable with him.
That's a way better way to sum up
What
my
you were
whole
trying
answer.
to say?
After we had our conversations that were a little bit more serious, more relationship based, I think the judgment went away.
Well, I don't even mean like the sexual stuff. I mean like when you kept friend zoning me. Like even though you were friend zoning me and semi breaking my heart, I was still very much comfortable with you and trusting you with literally everything.
After like 2 weeks, you would come back every time.
Yeah. Because you were cute and had a great personality.
That's fair. I'm not going to argue that.
Anyway, yeah. So I think it was just a combination of both.
Okay. Our next questions come from email. Somebody actually emailed us a list of questions, and these ones are a little bit more serious, and they vary a little bit. They're more current time questions. So let's start with, how do you continue to date one another through marriage? And I'm going to start this one because this is something that through the pandemic has been impossible. We still have, not even just the pandemic, having a child as well.
I was about to say, I think we're going to have differing opinions, but now I feel like we're going to be on the same page.
I think now it's more about finding a good movie or TV show and either making a good dinner or ordering something and kind of just giving ourselves that time to do something we want to do. Whereas before it used to be like a day trip to Des Moines to get Who Hot because it's Libby's obsession, and maybe, go to a couple stores and, go do something different out of town, go to a movie, something like that. And with the pandemic, that just hasn't been something that's been available. And especially now with a kid, finding a babysitter, and it just, you don't know who to trust in the pandemic, especially with a little kid. And now as we're getting hopefully near the end of this, hopefully those things start to change and we can get back to more of a normal.
I mean, we've only been married for 2 years, but
we've been together since 2013. So even then,
our whole marriage has been pandemic, and we literally have not been on a date. We have not gone out to eat. We have not seen a movie. We haven't just had time, just the two of us, unless it's like after Elliot goes down to bed and we watch a movie. We haven't had any of that in 2 years. So honestly, I feel like it's been really hard. And I think, if I'm being real, I definitely feel like it's put a little strain on our relationship.
I wouldn't disagree, but at the same time, I absolutely love staying home, watching a movie with you and Elliot, and just like having our little family time.
Well, I know. I love that too. Don't get me wrong. But like 2 years of doing nothing, like I miss going on dates. I miss having one-on-one time that's like beyond just a half hour, an hour before bed. Like,
no, I agree, but that's not something that I'm necessarily controlling.
No, I know. I didn't say that.
It's definitely a pandemic thing, and it's definitely having a baby thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I definitely think it's playing a larger role than we sometimes lead on.
It's definitely something we want to get back to. It's definitely something we want to prioritize soon, especially as the pandemic hopefully wraps up and we can kind of get back to normalcy.
And I know some people can be like, you can go out to eat, you can do blah, blah, blah. Like, we know we can. We're just choosing not to still.
We're picking our battles as far as what's a risk. And we're both vaccinated. And I know that there's not that much risk to go to a restaurant, but it's still then putting our child in somebody else's hands. Before we got married, I mean, we were practically married for a long time before we got married. So we were still prioritizing time together. We were still trying to go places, and we would spend time together. We have always rented a lot of movies and stayed home and done a lot of stuff like that anyway. But we obviously used to go to restaurants more often, go to movies, and go out of town for the day and do fun stuff like that. So I think I would love to get back to that. And I think that's the ultimate goal, but it just hasn't exactly been as easy.
So to sum it up, basically I feel like we have not been dating each other the last 2 years.
It's been different.
It's been different. Yeah.
The next question is, how have you worked through continuing to grow up at different paces and in different times than maybe one another? I'm going to answer this one.
No, you've answered all of them first so far.
You made me answer the first one
So
first.
I'm going to go.
Go ahead.
All right. So if you listen to the first episode, Christian mentioned that I used to be very annoying and obnoxious.
Used to?
Which may have been true. But I also feel like that I have always been very mature. And like, I feel like I've always felt older than I was at the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and if you would have let me answer first, that's what I was going to say.
Okay, yeah. So even though I may have been obnoxious and annoying with certain groups of friends, whatever, I also feel like I have always been mature and more grown up than most my age. And I think that may have part of the reason why I like don't have any friends is because I've always been an old person. So it seems, I don't know. I just kind of, anyway, so I feel like I've always kind of been on his level or even more so at times.
I definitely would say that I am not immature for my age. And even before having a kid, obviously having a kid makes you grow up real fast in different ways, but I've never been the go out party, anything like that. I would rather be at home and rather do more adult things like work on our house, or not that we really do that much, but so I think as far as answering the question, I think the only place where that might be weird is the fact that she was like 13 when certain movies came out and I was like super obsessed with them. Or we've had a couple of those come up recently and I wish I could think of an example off the top of my head, but for the most part, that hasn't really played a huge factor. The next question is, how do you talk about how to equally parent Elliot so it isn't always Libby/the mom's responsibility? This is a conversation we have a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to use work in quotes here, if you're watching, to describe staying at home. And I'm going to just say me working as the opposite.
We could be getting into an argument here shortly, so.
No, I don't think we will. And the reason is, when I'm at work all day, Libby is at home working all day by keeping our child alive and running her businesses. When I get off of work, we kind of switch, and I come home to work, and she typically goes to take pictures and work. So it's this weird balance of understanding that staying at home is a full-time job as well. And it
even though it doesn't always seem like you feel that way.
And it is working. So when I go to work, I come home to work. When I come home to work, she goes to work, even though she was already working. So I definitely don't think it's always the mom's responsibility to parent the child. And I think that's something that took me a little bit of time not to agree with that. I think it took me a little bit of time to get into the swing of things, just because the maternal versus paternal instinct is a little different. But I have no problem spending time with Elliot by myself if Libby has to go do stuff. I have no problem with any of that.
No, that's not what I was like implying.
I just think the way that we've figured out our routines, you do a lot more with Elliot, even when I'm taking care of the dogs or I'm cooking supper or something. There are trade-offs.
Yes.
Not that it's assigned to one person.
Sometimes like when you come home from work and I have been taking care of her all day plus running my business, and then I have to go leave for shoots, sometimes you get frustrated that I'm leaving for shoots. And I try to remind you that it's my job, but sometimes I feel like we're not.
That's not so much a parenting question though. That's more of a life balance that we're trying to figure out anyway.
I just feel like sometimes you feel like what I'm doing isn't a job, even the part where I'm home all day with Ellie. I think you think I just sit on the couch and watch TV all day with her, and that's not true at all.
I don't agree with that. I think our jobs aren't equal in the sense that I would much rather be here with you.
I get that.
and I'd much rather be able to work my own schedule like you. And so I think that's the thing that, like I said, we're trying to figure out. And hopefully we're both self-employed and we can balance that better. But unfortunately, it's just kind of how it is. It does work for us, and it's gotten better, and it's gotten much easier. But it is something that did take a while to kind of get balanced and make sure it makes sense. Is that fair?
Sure.
Next question.
Mm-hmm.
Has having a child changed how you approach your creative work and or passion for your day job?
I mean, it's definitely taken away a lot of time from my work.
Yeah, and at first, I could understand why some parents liked to work because it was a break. Like getting out of the house to work was kind of getting a break from the work, but at the same time, it makes you take your day job a little bit more seriously because now you have to provide for something. Obviously, I was still providing for the two of us before we had a child, helping provide. Let me correct that. Don't attack me. And we were still responsible. We were still trying to make money and everything, but it's different when it has more meaning behind it. And so it made me take it a little bit more seriously, but now it's making me want to be home more to spend more time with them. It's making me want to have a schedule that can balance Libby's a little bit better so then we can have time off together with Elliot. And
and see, I'm kind of the opposite. Like, I do enjoy the time together, but like, I also really look forward to going to shoots because it is my break, even though it's still work. The days get very long sitting at home, especially in the winter when it's super cold. You can't go anywhere or do anything. So
I think a lot of that too is pandemic though.
Well, I know.
Like we're not able to go out and do things.
Well, there's not much to do here anyways, but
that's another conversation. Yes.
I just meant like the days get very, very long at home with Elliot. She's getting to the age now where she gets bored with certain things and needs something new to do, new toys, new activity. And so we're
very much looking forward to the opportunity of having a change in scenery.
Yeah. And not that
in all aspects,
not that where you live really determines it, but we live in a very small house.
In a small town.
So I feel like always staying in our tiny living room with Elliot, she is just like, I need out of here. So sometimes I'll just throw her in the car with me and we'll go drive around for an hour. And that seems to help a little bit. But yeah, anyway, I do look forward to my shoots because it's my little break. And I feel like having Elliot has obviously changed my perspective and like the niche I want to get into with my work. I used to hate shooting families with little kids, and now it's like that and boudoir is all I want to do just because I relate more and I feel more comfortable with kids and things like that.
The last question is, how do you approach and communicate the tough subjects? Has that changed? I think back to our first question, we've always done a really good job about talking to each other, and I don't think the serious subjects are very difficult for us. I think we're just very honest with each other usually, and it does take some work to...
I think sometimes we're too honest.
Potentially. And I think sometimes it's a little bit of work to get the other person to see your point. And for us, the tough subjects have been moving and me finding a new job and things of that caliber. So I think that has been a little bit more serious, and that's something that I get a little bit more heated with just because I feel like a lot of that pressure falls more on me since I am not self-employed and I can't work from anywhere. And that is something we're definitely trying to get serious about.
I don't think we've ever been afraid to hurt each other's feelings, like if we have to, by being honest about certain things. But we're both very quick to forgive, talk about it, and then move on. I don't think either of us hold grudges, really. And that's been a good thing for our relationship.
I think the tough subjects would be a good episode that we could do in the future on its own about things like trying to have another baby or moving and finding a new job, or even what our plan is for the next 5 or 10 years, professionally and personally. So that's definitely something that we're going to cover. That is one of the topics we have. Actually, it's several of the topics we have coming up. Like we said at the beginning, this is going to be our new weekly video. Hopefully the setup in here and things change. The goal is to have this be a completely different look, a completely different feel than the Too Tired podcast, and probably the end of the month that will go to every other week. We have a bunch of guests that we're really excited for in the next couple of weeks that I just don't want to push back any further because I'm super excited to talk to them. But at the same time, we have a lot of topics on here that we really wanted to cover in the next month. And we didn't want to compromise on that either. So you might get a Pillow Talk and a Too Tired video each
week.
For the next week.
Each week
For the next month. And then from there, we'll kind of do our new setup and go from there.
Yeah. So that was today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it.
Make sure you're following us if you haven't already. Make sure you subscribe. If you have any questions like the ones we've answered today, shoot us a message on Instagram. Leave us a comment on YouTube. Send us an email. Send us a text message. It doesn't matter. We're super excited about the things we have coming up. All right. Until next time.